Coming up today, Korea announces a 5-day mourning period following the passing of former President Kim Youngsams. A state funeral will be held on Thursday. President Park Geun-hye and other regional leaders vow to coordinate their efforts to fight international terrorism. Plus, schools and the subway remain closed as Belgium extends the lockdown in Brussels, fearing an imminent terror attack. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, November 23rd here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning: South Korea is in a period of mourning following the death of former President Kim Youngsams over the weekend. Kim led Korea's pro-democracy movement and opposed the country's military dictators for decades. A state funeral will be held on Thursday. Song Ji-son reports.
Former Korean President Kim Youngsams died just after midnight on Sunday of a severe blood infection and heart failure after being admitted to a local hospital on Thursday with a high fever. Kim was Korea's 14th president and led the nation from 1993 to 1998, ending decades of military rule, but ended his term a lame duck after accepting a massive international bailout during the Asian financial crisis in 1997. The Korean government on Sunday announced a 5-day period of mourning for the late president. Kim will be laid to rest at the National Cemetery in Seoul on Thursday, following a ceremony at the National Assembly.
The government has decided to hold a state funeral for late President Kim Youngsams in accordance with the wishes of his family and the law.
President Park Geun-hye, who is wrapping up a multinational diplomatic tour at the East Asia Summit in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, offered her condolences to the late president's family.
The presidential office expresses its deep condolences to the former president's family. May he rest in peace. The government will prepare the funeral ceremony with courtesy and respect.
Memorial altars will be set up across the nation, including the main one at the National Assembly and at Korean embassies overseas. Kim is survived by his wife, 2 sons, and 3 daughters. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
Now, Kim Youngsams was a champion for democracy who ushered in a shift away from decades of military rule here in South Korea. For an overview of his life, our Kim Min-ji reports.
Former President Kim Youngsams was elected the youngest member of the National Assembly in 1954 as a member of the ruling party of South Korea's first president, Lee Seung-man. In 1979, Kim was expelled from the National Assembly for anti-government activities and criticizing President Park Geun-hye, the father of current President Park Geun-hye. Later in the early 1980s, he was placed under house arrest on 2 separate occasions for a total of 2 years, which prompted him to stage a hunger strike. He served in the National Assembly again before winning the presidential election in 1992. Kim has been credited for his role in Korea's pro-democracy movement, where he laid the groundwork for a peaceful transfer of power after decades of military rule. He also had his 2 predecessors, Chun Do-hwan and No Tae-woo, arrested on treason and mutiny charges for launching a crackdown against anti-government protesters. Kim pardoned them both at the end of his term.
While he was president, he was a great hero who carried out reforms no other could imitate.
The former president was also praised for making the nation's financial system more transparent, despite later being criticized for accepting a bailout from the IMF in the aftermath of the 1997-98 Asian financial crisis. He also implemented a policy requiring people to use their real names when making financial transactions, as well as ordering high-level public officials to reveal their assets.
He was a great figure who contributed to the history of democracy in Korea. We must honor and carry on the spirit of his philosophy of democracy.
Kim was born into a rich fishing family on December 20, 1927, on Geoje Island off the southeastern coast of Korea, while the country was still under Japanese colonial rule. 김민지, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, President Park Geun-hye met with her ASEAN counterparts and other regional leaders in Kuala Lumpur on Sunday. There, the leaders once again condemned the scourge of international terrorism. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
In one voice, President Park and other regional leaders once again strongly denounced terrorism, this time at the East Asia Summit on Sunday in the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur. The annual meeting comprises 10 ASEAN nations and its 8 dialogue partners and focuses on regional and global issues. It's the latest in a series of multilateral meetings, including the G20 and APEC summits, that have been dominated by the attacks in the French capital and elsewhere in recent weeks. Noting the advancement of North Korea's nuclear capability, President Park reiterated her call for regional support in ending the regime's nuclear ambitions, saying it's key to regional peace and stability. Also on the agenda was the contentious issue of the South China Sea. China has been building artificial islands in the region, resulting in friction with the United States and some Southeast Asian countries that have also claimed territory in the waters. Noting that the South China Sea is a key shipping route for South Korea, President Park stressed the need for securing both freedom of navigation and freedom of flight in the area.
President Park expressed the hope of seeing all claimants abide by the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea and other non-military pledges to contribute to the peace and security of the South China Sea.
Following the EAS meeting, the South Korean leader held her first ice-breaking summit with Australia's new Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and held separate talks with her ASEAN counterparts. With that, President Park has now wrapped up her 10-day tour, which also took her to Turkey and the Philippines for a string of multilateral summits. She is set to leave for Seoul late Sunday night. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News, Kuala Lumpur.
Now, the Prime Minister of Belgium has announced that Brussels will stay on maximum terror alert as the country still fears an attack like Paris. Charles Michel named the targets as commercial centres, shops and public transport. The authorities believe at least 2 people are ready to attack Brussels imminently. Universities, schools and the city's subway system will remain closed on Monday. Restaurants, museums and cinemas were closed on Sunday and could well stay shut for a while. European Union institutions will remain open though, but security checks will be stepped up as heavily armed police and soldiers continue to patrol the city's main areas. The fugitive Paris attacker Saleh Abdeslam is thought to be at large in the Belgian capital. Around 100 bodies have been recovered from a huge landslide in a remote jade mining area of northern Myanmar. Local authorities expect the death toll to rise as rescue teams continue to search for the hundreds more feared dead or missing from Saturday's massive collapse in Pakan. Those killed are known to be workers, many of them migrants from other parts of the country, toiling long hours for little pay. The incident happened when a giant amount of dump soil from the mine collapsed at around 3 a.m, where many of the miners were sleeping in huts. An environmental group said that there have been a series of similar fatal accidents in recent months due to mining companies dumping waste into lakes or in massive mounds, which are prone to collapse. Now, there are growing calls for the United States to deal with North Korea's rising nuclear and missile threats more actively, as Pyongyang seems unlikely to give up its nuclear program on its own. In a policy recommendation piece, Scott Schneider, who is senior researcher for Korea Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, said that the US, South Korea and other negotiating partners in the 6-party nuclear talks should sharpen pressure on Pyongyang to show the regime that its current path is a dead-end option. He said the partners should also clarify to the North the benefits of abandoning its nuclear ambitions. In a similar call, Mitchell Wallerstein, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Counter-Proliferation Policy, said the US should stress that it's capable of launching a preemptive strike in case North Korea makes an additional nuclear provocation. Now, today is a solemn day in Korea because the country is marking the 5th anniversary of North Korea's deadly shelling of Yeonpyeong-do Island, and Pyongyang has issued another warning, saying it will retaliate mercilessly if the South fires at its waters in the West Sea. A spokesman for the regime's southwestern military unit said South Korea is scheming to attack North Korean waters again. In a separate report, the North state-run Korean Central News Agency said if Seoul respects a deal signed in August this year to defuse military tensions, the South must behave accordingly. Now, on November 23, 2010, North Korea fired scores of artillery rounds and rockets at the South Korean border island, killing 2 soldiers and 2 civilians. It was North Korea's first attack on South Korean territory since the Korean War. A memorial service commemorating the attack will take place later this Monday at the War Memorial in Seoul. Korean exports, the main driver of the economy, have been dropping every month this year as demand slows in global economies and especially in China. But some consumer goods have managed to buck the trend, signalling that there may be some light at the end of the tunnel. Our Park Geun-hye has this report.
This cosmetics section at a duty-free shop located in the heart of Seoul is bustling with foreigners trying to get their hands on stacks of products. Tracy Wang is one of them.
Because the K-pop culture is popular in Taiwan, so I love to girl generation, and makeup is very beautiful.
And such high demand for Korean cosmetic goods is proving to be a breakthrough for sluggish Korean exports. Outbound shipments of local beauty products rose over 50% on average in the first 9 months of this year, while overall exports dropped more than 6%.
Data from the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry shows that some electronics goods and food products are also riding on this trend, overcoming otherwise slowing global demand. Exports of products like milk, beer, and rice cookers went up almost 25% on average during the period.
Beauty and food products build a reputation thanks to Korean pop culture in the beginning, but it's the industry's continued R&D efforts and in-depth analysis of foreign markets that actually lead the growth.
But as Korea's main export items are mostly intermediary goods like steel and petroleum products, some question whether the surprising growth in the consumer goods sector will be able to lead the country's overall exports. Still, experts say there's great potential because demand for consumer goods will continue to expand. In Southeast Asia and China, markets still considered small in comparison to their huge populations. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News.
Now, a local musical that has sold out in theatres across Korea for years and years is seeking success abroad by licensing itself for productions in China. The producers hope the popularity of Korean dramas and music in China will rub off on their show. Our cultural correspondent Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
Ballet means laundry in the Korean language, and it plays a vital role in a musical that's named after the chore. The story centers around a young woman named Na-young who moves to Seoul and meets Solongo, an illegal immigrant from Mongolia, over a load of laundry. They both work hard to get by and struggle to hold on, though life deals them quite a few blows. Ultimately, the story aims to console anyone facing the harsh realities of everyday life.
Laundry signifies a longing to cleanse the heart and mind, washing away the dirt, sweat, and tears in order to be clean and fresh again.
The musical, which is now in its 10th year, has already attracted more than 500,000 people in Korea.
The musical was so popular, it was performed in Japan in 2012, and next January it'll also be featured in China.
China-based Clear Sea Holdings is investing $2 million into the musical for a license to present it in China through 2021. It's expecting a return on the investment within 2 years, thanks to the high demand for Korean cultural content spurred by the Korean wave.
Since Korean TV series has been very popular and Chinese people, audience, are very familiar with the language, so about the familiarity of a culture plays a big part of that. If we know the culture, if we know the background, know the language, that definitely help a lot.
Musicals are a booming business in China, with the industry growing at around 25% a year. The only problem seems to be that there isn't enough content to satisfy the growing demand for quality shows. But that's where Korean musicals come in.
We work with librettists in the countries we perform in to cater to their tastes while staying true to the musical's core. I hope more Korean musicals can thrive by licensing their productions overseas.
In Korea, the musical is presented 7 times a week at the Dongyang Arts Center in the heart of the theater district in Seoul. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Thank you as always for watching. We hope your week is off to a good start, and we'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye.